let's go ahead and move on. PFF came out and they claimed that Allen Robinson could potentially be traded by the Chicago Bears. So first, could this be a possibility? And then also, what are the other trade candidates that are on this Chicago Bears team?
Yeah,
I'm going to let you start first, Reese.
Yeah, I suppose, it's definitely a possibility. I mean, I wouldn't deny it. I think I said before that if, maybe the Bears are having a bit of a down year, but Allen Robinson's having a decent year, and it doesn't really seem like the Bears are going to do much, then maybe if they don't already have an extension in order with him, then they move him to a more playoff caliber team that's looking to add another wide receiver. If the Bears feel like they don't have a future with him. I feel like kind of the narrative in the news recently has been, though, that the Bears are pretty close to reaching that extension with Allen Robinson, so I don't think that'd be 100% likely. However, I think that someone that could be moved first along that offensive line would be Bobby Massie. We talked a little bit about the offensive line, possibility of bringing in someone like Brian Winters. Someone like Bobby Massie, who's been on this Bears line for a while. I think, for a certain amount of, for good reason, he doesn't have too much talk about him. He's not really exemplary. He's never really been the best person on the line. And as you brought up to me before this podcast, he's up for, a $9 million payday, or, a decent pay bump in what the Bears are currently paying him that, maybe it's debatably whether or not he's really actually worth that or not. So, maybe the Bears try to move, Bobby Massie, who's their right tackle, to another team that's looking to fill that kind of gap, and the Bears could go out and hopefully get a more cost-efficient solution at that position.
Yeah, absolutely. With Bobby Massie, it just makes sense. I feel like if the Bears are having, a down season, getting rid of a payday like that makes sense to me. He's obviously a talented right tackle. He's performed well for us, but we could definitely improve at that position. And if we are having a bad season, it's time to look to maybe trying to retool this offense a little bit. So it wouldn't be too bad to move on from him and then try to get a right tackle elsewhere in the future. As far as Allen Robinson goes, no, I do not believe that Allen Robinson will be traded unless he just wants some crazy money contract that the Bears can't provide. The Bears struggled to get a lot of consistency from that wide receiver position until Allen Robinson. If you guys don't remember the 2017 season, I can reassure you, you don't want to rewatch it. It was horrible. I think our best wide receiver was Kendall Wright. And then we also had like Marcus Cooper. Marcus Cooper was our cornerback. Excuse me. I was thinking of Marcus. Cameron Meredith got freaking injured that season because Glennon led him in a preseason pass against the Tennessee Titans, tearing his ACL. And then we had what's his name though? The guy that was on the Steelers, Marcus. I'm trying to remember. You know who I'm talking about? Yeah, I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
Anyways, we also had, Tanner Gentry holding down the fort for us out there, undrafted free agent, and Trey McBride. And it was just Bezo. I think he was injured a lot that year too. So we had a really, really bad season that year as far as wide receiver play. So Allen Robinson has been the first ounce of, consistent wide receiver play. And then obviously we drafted Anthony Miller as well. And he's also a great leader. It's hard to find wide receivers who aren't really divas. Same with kind of cornerbacks. They're just kind of a position that are really flashy. So you tend to get a lot of characters at it. And, but hey, I have to say, if I like Allen Robinson, but I don't like him for $18 million a year. And if that's what we have to give him, I think that the Bears look to trade him. But as far as another player that could potentially be traded, one player that we talk about extensively on this podcast, who we both believe could be traded, and it's a little bit of a cop-out answer, is Kyle Fuller.
Yeah.
Kyle Fuller's going to get traded, or he's going to get a pay cut, or he could potentially get an extension. It's really all over the board. He has the most obvious, place to look for salary cap space. He has a $20 million payday coming up this coming season, and we could get at least a second round pick for him, Probably even more if he's having a good season. He's a very talented cornerback. He made the Pro Bowl this year. He was an All-Pro the year prior. And we have a ton of depth at the position. I don't believe that we really, need him to succeed. And I like Kyle Fuller. I think he's a talented quarterback. I think he's very underrated. But as far as looking at pieces who could potentially be moved, if the Bears are doing poorly this season, because in reality, we're probably not going to trade anybody unless we're having a poor season. That's just how it kind of goes. Kyle Fuller is one of the first on the list, and we'd probably get a pretty good payday for him.
Yeah, I always felt like, once the Bears picked up Jalen Johnson in this past draft, that Kyle Fuller already had a foot out the door in a way. I mean, it is possible, certainly, that he could get an extension, but I think with, the more than likely salary cap cut coming, getting rid of Kyle Fuller, either moving him in a trade or cutting him is going to be a good way to cut some cap out. And like you said, in a poor season, you can get some decent draft capital for someone like Kyle Fuller. You probably go out there and make that move because it's just a smart move for your future. Not that he isn't a great player, but the Bears are pretty loaded at that position. So, why not get some decent return for him? So I 100% agree with that. My other possible trade candidate, and I think this also goes along with kind of the setup of, it's been a pretty poor season, is Tariq Cohen. And I think that's just because he's a niche player. I think, you and I, Austin, really want to see him work out of the slot a lot more than out of the backfield. But, I always kind of felt like Tariq Cohen, I think you and I have always been kind of on edge to see kind of what he asked for in his contract extension. If he asked for a lot of money, it's going to be tough for the Bears to actually, kind of feel like he's worth that. Tariq Cohen's a hard person to put a value on, and maybe some contending teams could find great value in him and would be willing to trade, some decent draft capital or maybe a different asset that the Bears could use for Tariq Cohen. But, I almost feel like Tariq Cohen's going to want to, every player is going to feel like they're worth a decent amount of money, and he's going to want to get his payday coming off of his rookie contract. So, I expect him to go out there and probably ask for a significant amount of money. Are the Bears willing to pay that for someone that they kind of use only in certain specialty packages and, in special teams occasionally? I don't know. That's on Ryan Pace. That's on the Bears upper management. Something tells me if he comes out asking for a lot, the Bears aren't going to be very receptive to it.
Yeah, and I think understandably so. Tariq Cohen obviously is a valuable piece to this team. He had a major down year last year compared to his 2018 season, which he played really well in. But there are some limitations that come with Tariq Cohen. I think the one thing is Matt Nagy really struggles to understand exactly how to utilize him. And I can't even blame Matt Nagy completely because he is a running back. So you expect for him to have at least some sort of efficiency through the offensive line, like being able to go through tackles. But that's just by far not the best way to use Tariq Cohen. And I think increasing his snap share at that position, or in those type of play calls at least, has really put a dent on his productivity last year. Obviously, I would like to see him play from the slot most of the time, or have him take screens most of the time, or, little go routes, stuff like that, catching the ball out of the backfield. That's what he's good at. And I think this year I'm really going to have to see if Matt Nagy uses him well enough for me to view him as a valuable piece of this team. Because in all reality, he's probably going to ask for, I'm going to project his contract to be about $6 million a year, which for someone who's a secondary running back is a lot of money for a second running back. $6 million a year is a lot of money for a second running back. It's almost first running back money, Yeah. Number one running back money. As far as a receiver goes, though, that's not that much money. That's pretty on par with what we gave, probably a little bit less actually than we gave Taylor Gabriel. So I'm just going to have to see where his numbers come in, but absolutely someone that you look at that could potentially be traded. Someone that I have who, I think that gets overlooked a lot on this Bears team is Roy Robertson Harris. He's a very talented defensive end, and, it's more than likely that he's going to get a payday this season, and it's not going to be from the Bears because we're just really stacked at that position right now. And there were a little bit of rumors last year that he was being shopped later in the season, but nothing ultimately came from that. And honestly, the Bears, with a trade mid-season, they might even be able to snag like a 4th-round pick for Roy Robertson Harris, which would be, incredible. I'd be very happy with the 4th-round pick. It's more than likely probably a little bit less than that, or maybe you get a 4th and you send out a 6th or some sort of trade like that. It's hard to really say with these trades sometimes, but young player that has showed a lot of pass rush potential.
Yeah, I do like Roy Robertson Harris, and it would be unfortunate to see him go. I mean, that's for sure. But at the same time, he's someone in this defense that's very replaceable. With just so much talent, Khalil Mack frees up a lot of space for Roy Robertson Harris, which isn't like undoing what Roy Robertson Harris has been able to accomplish or anything along those lines. But he is someone that's definitely going to be up for a payday. He has put up some very good numbers. It's very unrealistic that the Bears would be able to keep him. I think with just, a tightening cap, it's realistically someone that the Bears need to move on from. So, if you can get some kind of return for him, which I think, like you said, a 4th does sound pretty reasonable for, a pass rusher of that quality, for a defensive end of that quality. So, yeah, that doesn't really take me back or surprise me at all to if, he ended up leaving via trade, and ultimately if they can't trade him, released.
Hey guys, like our video, subscribe, and check out our bi-weekly podcast on Apple Podcasts. Thanks.